I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator Ben Cardin called for Congress to act in response to Tuesday's elementary school shooting in Texas. On the Senate floor Thursday, the Maryland Democrat asked, quote, "How many children have to die before enough is enough?" Cardin said inaction is not an option. This tragedy was the latest incident in a string of mass shootings that has renewed the gun control debate in the country. Here's more from Senator Cardin.
I have 6 requests for committees to meet during today's session of the Senate. They have the approval of the majority and minority leaders.
Duly noted.
Madam President, another mass shooting, another elementary school, 19 children, ages 7 through 10, gunned down, 2 adults killed. They were in our schools, an elementary school, a place that parents send their children expecting it to be a safe zone where they can learn and interact with other children and be safe from things like being attacked and shot. An elementary school we're talking about. The anguish of the families that have lost their children or lost their loved ones. Children that witness this will be traumatized for life, scarred by what happened in Texas. And then last week we saw in Buffalo 10 people gunned down while shopping in a grocery store. Very much racially motivated by a white supremacist. This is happening throughout our country. We've had gun violence in Baltimore. A few years ago, we had gun violence at Great Oaks School in Maryland. We're seeing this happen over and over and over again. I and all Marylanders and Americans are sad, we're angry, we're fearful, and we're frustrated. Yes, we have to deal with the mental health issues here. There's no question about that in my mind. And let me just point out for my colleagues that I joined with Senator Wyden and Senator Crapo and Senator Thune in releasing a draft on the telehealth recommendations as part of the mental health work that's being done by the Senate Finance Committee, and our presiding officer has been one of the leaders on this issue. We recognize we have to do more for mental health. Our task force released our draft discussion documents dealing with telehealth. We really learned during the COVID-19 how valuable telehealth is for access to care. Individuals who really could not get to their healthcare providers were able to do that through telehealth services. We also recognized how valuable telehealth services are in regards to mental health and behavioral health. It was gaining access that could have been denied before. So this is all important that we move forward on these recommendations, and we're looking at ways that we remove obstacles in the way for people in our community to be able to get telehealth services, removing some of the restrictions that were in the law prior to COVID-19, to make it easier not only for public insurance programs, but private insurance programs to provide for telehealth. And by the way, as you know, we have other task forces that are working in regards to children's mental health needs. All of that is important. We need to move forward on extending the resources and access to mental health services so we can identify people in need, give them the services they need, and protect our communities. But we need to do much more than mental health services in regards to protecting Americans from gun violence. Let me quote from the Baltimore Sun's editorial this morning. It's titled, "Real Insanity is Doing Nothing About Assault Weapons Again." The terrible tragedy raises all kinds of questions, from the mental health of the killer, the inadequacies of community-based psychiatric care, and the bullying by classmates that might have contributed to his instability, to the future of those around him to recognize this potential threat. But one element stands out above so many others: easy access to assault weapons. This editorial was clearly dealing, as I should have mentioned, with the Texas tragedy that occurred this week. The United States is an outlier among the nations in the world. We stand alone on the number of guns we have per capita and amount of gun violence. Madam President, that's not a category that we want to lead the world in, and we do. We've got to take action. In 2021 alone, 45,000 Americans lost their life through gun violence. Of that number, over 20,000 were killed as a result of murder or homicide. 20,000. Over 300 children lost their lives through gun violence in 2021. As the Washington Post editorial noted in yesterday's editorial about the elementary school shooting in Texas, was one of the at least 24 acts of gun violence of K through 12 campuses so far this year, in which at least 28 people have been killed. This came a day after the FBI report showing a sharp increase last year in active shooters attacks nationwide. In 2020, for the first time, firearms became the leading cause of death for American children and teenagers, supplanting car accidents. We've lost our way. We need to do much more. How many children have to die before we act? When is enough enough? Congress needs to take up and pass common sense gun safety legislation. Madam President, I'm going to give a few examples of legislation I hope that we can take up and consider. First, an assault weapon ban. Ban the sale. We have legislation in S-736 that bans the sale, manufacturing, transfer, importation of assault weapons, including military-style weapons. The Baltimore Sun also talked about this. This is in the Sun paper's editorial. These are not components one needs for self-defense, not the essentials required for target practice or local shooting range, not an asset that the average deer hunter needs. They are, however, the common tools of mass shooters. It's been estimated that about 1/4 of such instances have involved individuals armed with assault weapons. The public does not need assault weapons for self-defense. They don't need it for recreational use. They don't need it. These are military-style weapons that should have no place in private ownership. We should take action in order to make our communities safer and our children safer. We should pass the Bipartisan Background Check Expansion Act, which would require checks for all gun sales, including those from unlicensed sellers. By the way, the House has already passed this action. And we should enhance Background Check Completion Act. That's an act that would eliminate the so-called Charleston loophole that allows for gun sales to go forward if a check is not completed within 3 days, which is an unrealistic requirement that we have. These are just common sense gun safety bills that could be passed. We should pass the Keep America Safe Act, S-1108, which would prohibit the importation, sale, manufacturing, transfer, or possession of magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition. Why does anyone, for a lawful purpose, need an ammunition magazine that holds more than 10 rounds? The mass killers use it. We should make it easier for them to carry out these atrocities. Well, let me just mention the one option that should not be on the table. And that option is to do nothing. How many children have to die before enough is enough? Doing nothing about the epidemic of guns across this country is killing our children. We must work together to translate our grief into collective action. Madam President, enough is enough. Let us act. I yield the floor.